What's up, lady? I am your host, Maggie Mejia. I am here to encourage any woman in Christ, helping you on your spiritual, life, and business journey. I share with you the thoughts, feelings, actions, and attitudes required for life and business. And I can't wait to coach you. So check out this episode. Hey, what's up? I'm so excited for the podcast that we have today. I'm going to talk all about intentionality and what that looks like. How can we see it in our day? What stops us from living intentional lives, just even on a daily basis, right? I think in order for us to live intentional lives, there are two things that we have to do, right? Number one, we have to think intentional thoughts. And then number two, we have to take intentional action. I think when you do those two things, you think intentional thoughts, this is on a daily basis, and you take intentional action on a daily basis, then you will have an intentional life. As you guys have heard me say in the last podcast episode about decisions, I was talking about there are small decisions that we make on a daily basis, and they basically give us the result that we have in our life. So if you don't like the results you have in your life right now, I need you to go back and really think of the mini decisions that you made every day. And I think this podcast is going to help you actually make better decisions according to your own personal goals for both life and business and family, hobby, all of those things. Before I get into what it looks like to take intentional action and think intentional thoughts, I want to talk a little bit about what stops us from that, because that's the biggest thing, right? If everyone can just make intentional thoughts every day according to the goals that they have, I think everybody would. Like, why wouldn't we do that? I think that we give a lot of our power over to our circumstances, whether that be work, family, marital, familial issues, just life itself. We know that when we go through hard times in our lives, it produces an emotion in us that gets in the way of taking intentional action. In this case, let's say I am trying to achieve a goal, right? A familial thing. I want to connect more with a sibling, or maybe I want to take my mother out more. And life circumstances like losing a job, let's say, right? You say you want to take your parents out more, out to eat or just out to a movie or something, but then you lose your job. So what often happens is we will blame the circumstance, the loss of a job, on why we now can't take our mother out, why we now can't take our sibling out, or whatever it is that we wanted to do. But when you get into the intention, meaning why did you want to take your mother out? Why did you want to take your sibling out, right? It was for the purpose of connection. It was for the purpose to develop a deeper relationship, perhaps between the two of you. So a circumstance like losing your job shouldn't get in the way of the intention of connecting with your mother or with your sibling, because now finances are tight. You may have wanted to go out, but if you go a layer deeper, right? We're talking about intentional living. If you go a layer deeper, it was always to connect with that person on a deeper level. So there are ways that you can still show up in that person's life, make that deeper connection, stay on the phone longer, maybe FaceTime and cook a meal together, right? All of those things are free, and they still have that pointed intention of you connecting with that parent or sibling. But sometimes we just think that circumstances is the problem. You can use the same thing for marriages, right? Everybody's like, oh, Friday, date night, right? And everybody goes out. But let's say you stop going out. But you have to ask, what is the purpose behind date night? It is connection. So if you lost a job and you can no longer go out every Friday night for date night, now you just have to get more creative on how you want to connect with your spouse. But some people think that going out to dinner is the connection. Going out and buying her something or him something, right? Spending money is the connection. And it's not true. It's just simply not true. If we let circumstances be the reason for connection, what will happen is the circumstance changes. Now it produces an emotion in us that gets in the way of that intention. Let's say you make confidence mean you losing weight, or you being a certain amount of weight, you looking a certain type of way. If you only base your confidence on a circumstance, meaning the numbers on a scale, when the circumstance changes, it produces an emotion that gets in the way of your intention. So let's say you want to be more confident just in yourself, in your own skin. You then have to ask yourself, why? I told you guys one of my favorite questions in the world is why. I'm constantly telling my students to go 5 whys deep. When you ask yourself, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And it's a negative emotion that you're feeling in the moment, go 5 layers deep with that. So example, I feel depressed. Why am I feeling depressed? Maybe I feel depressed because my husband and I no longer have the connection we used to have with each other. Well, why do you and your husband no longer have the connection that you used to have with each other? Well, we used to go out for date night every Friday, and now we don't go out as much. We're lucky if we even go out once a month. Why did you stop going out on date nights? We didn't have money. He lost his job. Can you see that if your intention is not set from an internal place, from your why that comes from the inside, that as soon as the circumstances change on the outside, the loss of a job, the lack of date nights, maybe you can't take your mom or dad out, whatever the circumstance is, do not let it determine how you are going to show up in life. If you do that, your intention automatically goes out the window. And now all you're left with is an emotion that doesn't serve you. And you weaponize that emotion against yourself. Because what was once set out to be confidence, when we only leave confidence in the hands of a circumstance, a number on a scale, now we rob ourselves and weaponize our thoughts and our emotions against ourselves when we don't see the number that we want to see on the scale. When we stop going on the date nights because the loss of a job, that now means I have lost connection with my husband, right? We made it determine who we are. And that's the differentiation you have to make before you can start living a life of intention. Then you have to know that circumstances, meaning neutral things, events that happen in life, a number on a scale is just a number on a scale until you make meaning of that number. When you make that number mean something about you, then you are putting all of your thought and intention and emotion into a number. And that is what we have to stop doing. We have to stop weaponizing our own emotion against ourselves because we left it in the hands of a circumstance. See, when you start asking yourself why 5 levels deep, you really start to get to the motive and the intention of the heart. And that is what really matters. When you want to live intentionally, and you want to show up in life as your fullest, best self, then you have to know that intention should always start your day. Your day should always, always, always start with intention. Number 1, you have to start thinking intentional thoughts. How is it that we do that? Every single morning, I get up and I write down how I want to show up for the day. What is going to be my posture? What is going to be my attitude toward people? People meaning whether it be my siblings, my children, my husband, or the woman at the grocery store, right? When I go pump my gas, when I decide to drive over to Walmart and get some office supplies, it doesn't matter what it is. How do I want to show up today? It's actually what helps me to talk to strangers. I love talking to strangers. Some people, either you love it or you hate it. because some of my friends, they're here for it. Like, they're like, oh, yes, hi. And we will engage strangers and just get into a whole conversation with a stranger. But my son is a total introvert. So whenever I'm with him, if I stop and talk to a stranger, he's like, oh my gosh, why do you do that? Like, you do that all the time. And so I say that all to say the reason I even talk to strangers is because I set my intention for that day, right? I also want to think intentionally about the fruit of the Spirit. Like, what fruit of the Spirit do I want to practice today? Do I want to practice kindness? Do I want to practice goodness or faithfulness or love or peace or joy, right? What is it that I want to exercise today? So that is what thinking intentional thoughts are. You wake up in the morning, you take out your journal. Journal is super important to any leader. If you're a leader, right, or an aspiring leader, then I want you to know there are two things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to read. You have to read, okay? And number two, you have to journal. You got to get your thoughts out. Sometimes those thoughts are going to look messy, ugly, dumb, right? But if you don't allow yourself to mind dump, you never create space for all of the creativity and all of the inspiration and innovation that actually lives in your mind. Your mind is just so fogged up with everything. So that's number one. You have to think intentionally. You're getting out a journal and you're thinking intentionally. How do you want to show up? How you're going to posture yourself? And what fruit of the Spirit do you want to practice today? I just think that that's a great way to actually practice the fruit of the Spirit in your life every day. Okay, so the second thing you have to do is after thinking intentional thoughts, you want to take intentional action. Right? So I can't just write down what I want my intention to be and how I want to show up and then not show up that way. Right? So I'll give you a perfect example. There are so many people that I have spoken to personally that have told me, and I used to think this too, because I remember being a baby Christian and literally I would not pray for patience because everybody knows when you pray for patience, the Lord is going to bring something to you that you have to be patient for. So you have to really mean what you say. This is when I say you'll really see the intention behind someone's prayers even. So there are people who say, I won't pray for patience because I know that I'm going to be tested in my patience, right? But I want you to know that patience is a fruit of the Spirit. If patience is a fruit of the Spirit and you have the Spirit living inside of you, then what that tells me is that you can exercise patience. One of the definitions of patience is to know how to handle pain without complaint. Let that seep in for a second. To handle pain without complaint. And sometimes the reason we don't want to even pray for patience is because we have become so accustomed to complaining. Some of us don't know who we are outside of complaining. Some of us don't know who we are outside of worry. If you could free up all that space in your mind that you occupy with worry and complaining, how much mental space would you have if I can take all that worry and all that complaining away? Who would you be? And so when a person doesn't want to pray for patience, I can almost guarantee you that they're kind of accustomed to complaining. You have to really think about, how do you want to live your life? As a complainer or as a person who has patience, who knows how to exercise patience, who knows how to go through pain without complaint, right? That's food for thought. So here you are thinking intentional thoughts, taking intentional action, and now your life is resulting in an intentional life. And I think at the end of the day, at least for me, I don't have to have all the money in the world, all the stuff in the world, all the things that everyone chases. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a nice house and a nice car. Believe me, I'm not saying anything wrong with that. I just want to know that I'm being intentional with the marriage I have, intentional with the home I have, right? Because you could have a big house and not want anybody in it. You could have a nice car and never want to drive anyone anywhere. So it's not the stuff, but it's what's your intention with the stuff? What do you want to do with the stuff? How does God want to use you as you have the stuff, right? Will you host people in the beautiful home? Are you willing to drive someone home in your nice car, right? That's what I'm talking about. I want to know that I lived an intentional life, that I didn't allow the circumstances of life to be my reason or excuse for not living an intentional life. And I want to know that every intention that I set out in the morning, that I'm actually following that up with my action on a daily basis. But because we're human and nobody's perfect, I do want you to know that on the days that you don't feel like, today wasn't really an intentional kind of day, that you would intentionally give yourself compassion, that you would intentionally not judge yourself, but that you would intentionally love yourself and give yourself the same grace that God gives you on a daily basis. All right, go out there and live the intentional life. It starts with intentional thinking, followed up by intentional action, and you will have resulted in an intentional life. I'll see you next week. Hey, if you like what you heard in this podcast, then you have to visit us at She Matters University. This is my coaching program where I teach Christian women just like yourself how to embrace her identity and go after her God-given dreams. Join me at maggiemejia.com/join. That's Maggie Mejia, MEJIA.com/join. And I'd love to coach you over there.